Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to set up a drawing, because that was a big problem for people last year, and try to give you a few tips that I tried to pass on to the group last year. First of all, I use a sketchbook like this. I like it because it can be opened up for a full sheet of paper, and I don't have to carry a big sketchbook around, and it can fit into my pocket or in my little bag. And what I try to do it's very important when you're going into a place, is to find a place that interests you, a nice view. And there are a couple of little tips I want to pass on. One is that you should always do a little thumbnail sketch of what you want before you do the drawing. And when I say a thumbnail sketch, and actually I'm going to switch to just plain paper and not mess up my sketchbook for this expensive paper. Anyway, but a thumbnail sketch is something you just do a little box about the size of your piece of paper, and sometimes I'll even put my line of where the joint of the paper is. And let's say I want to do a view of this would be the space where our studio is, the Palazzo Collegio Romano, for example, and maybe it would be, I'd think, well, I'll select a view something like that. So here's the sky, this is the ground, and this is the building in the distance. And I'm imagining the vanishing point to be off-center, always off-center if possible. And generally speaking, although this little sketch shows it to become somewhat symmetrical, I would generally try to get closer to one side than the other, because it tends to make a more interesting drawing to have a little bit of space on one side, a little more space on the other side. Okay, so once I've kind of figured out where I'm going to be, what I'm going to look at, and where I'm going to be sitting, and as I mentioned, when it's hot, you want to be out of the sun and into the wind, and then it's cold, you want to be out of the wind and into the sun, basically. And the most important thing is get a good, comfortable place to sit. Don't sit out in the middle where people are going to be stepping on you and all that stuff. So what I try to do is to set up a line, a horizontal line, which could be the horizon line, that's really level. It's not leaning. It doesn't look like something that somebody fell out of their sketchbook. And to do that, I cheat. I either measure it, or I take my finger along the bottom of the book and drag it along, and I get myself a line that's basically level, like that. Can have a little bump to it, doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'll refer to my little thumbnail sketch, and okay, the vanishing point's going to be over here, sort of about, a third of the way across the sheet. And then I will use my sketchbook or a piece of paper, and I'll hold that up to the edge of the building that I'm on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, and I'll get the angle of that roof, and by getting a vertical there, and I'll show you. I hope I'll have this with me on Thursday. I use a carpenter's rule for this, and you just put that down, and that line, you line that up over here with the vanishing point, and that line is basically pretty accurate. That goes to the vanishing point. So then, as Maurice showed you in his his talk, or example, then the lines for a one-point perspective are radiating off from that vanishing point in a very radial sort of way. And that's the beginning of the drawing, because everything is going to kind of fall on those lines. That's when it's sort of parallel. Then the other thing I do, and is try to get as accurately as possible, let's say the end wall of the space or the building. Could be a room, it could be the front of a building, could be the end of one of these beautiful piazzas. And I do that by holding up my pencil like that and getting the height, and then without changing, and I can move my finger up and down to get the height right, and then without changing the distance of that from my eye, I just go down like that, and that'll get a square. So let's say there's the square, and the space turns out to be a square and a half, let's say, whatever it is. You have to measure that. Then you can simply connect these corners and I turn the paper so it makes it easier, and I bring those lines out. Let me use a pen that shows up a little better. Here's the vanishing point. Here would be my horizon line. Then here's the proportion of that end wall, which let's say is a square, and let's see, I don't know, maybe a square and a half or a golden section, something like that. And then I connect these corners to the vanishing point, and that gives me some idea of the space, the space and the proportion of that space for the drawing. And maybe there's space that runs in the case of if I were using the studio in Rome as our example, this would give you some idea of this. If say the sky is up here and the building is there, and then the building on the side is over here. And then you have to measure to get the subdivision of this somewhat accurately. You have to measure that, but you can actually just do it by dividing that in half, dividing that in half, dividing that in half. If it's, for example, a 4-story building, you could do that. And then if it's, let's say there are 5 bays, you could, and it's very easy to find, I mean, even bays are quite easy because you find the middle and then subdivide what's left. Or you just kind of eyeball this. Let's say there are 5 bays and you put a space in the middle and divide that again. So that gives you the 5 spaces like that. And then basically you have a grid to work from. So these could be columns. They could be windows. In this case it would be 5 spaces and 4 elements, windows or columns or whatever they are. And that gives you a kind of basic foundation for building the drawing. Then what you do beyond that is just how much you're willing and able to pay attention. The other thing that's very important is for the lines not to be flat and level and plain, just like in singing or in music, the sound of a tone, let's say, or the tone in a drawing or a line in a drawing should always be going somewhere and should have some vitality to it. I like putting borders around my drawings, and so I'll very often deliberately shake the pencil a little bit just to give the line some interest. You know, turn the thing again so it makes it a little easier to put a border around the drawing. I like these kinds of corners, as most architects do, and then turn it around this way, and so on and so forth. So the line has a kind of vitality or interest that keeps it from being, you know, flat and boring. So that basically is how the drawing is set up, and I get a little list over here. Yeah, basically that's it. So, and then you can, you can build off of that. You know, these could be columns. This could be the, some kind of a temple thing, and and I'll show you. I'll go back and show you that drawing again. But that gives you an idea of how you might set up a drawing, or you can set up. In fact, I do recommend setting up a drawing that you can then build detail into. You don't have to imagine this in advance. You don't have to be an artist to do this. This is simply a question of being deliberate and measuring a little bit, getting a basic foundation, and then adding detail. Got it?